Do you want to know how to teach your child to think for themselves? You're not alone. Every parent is waiting for that. I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, child development, and education, all through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about independent thinking. In this video, we're going to move beyond obedience, and we're going to prepare our children to evaluate their choices, to consider what their future consequences might be, and then to take ownership for their own behaviors and decisions so that they can learn from those things and end up becoming more self-governed for the future. Before you can have a child that will think for themselves and problem solve for themselves, you have to actually train them how to respond to your own direction and know answers. It is true that most independent thinking skills are trained. That means that a child is given enough information, enough of the why, enough of the boundaries, enough practice and self-regulation with someone watching over it, that then they start to just naturally do it for themselves. Now, there is a difference between making sure that you do that proper training, making sure that you're consistent in all of that parenting so that that training can happen, and coddling and micromanaging a child. If there is a lot of fear in the parenting, if there is coddling that's happening because you're worried the child's going to make a mistake, or if there is heavy-handedness because there's a lot of forcefulness that happens, then the emotions will creep into the teaching and make it so that the child will be afraid to launch out and make decisions on their own and take full responsibility for their decisions. Just so you know, if you're super heavy-handed in your parenting, then your child will oftentimes turn to lying because they're afraid of disappointing you. So how do we make sure that we don't get stuck in that type of a downward spiral? Well, we make sure that we proactively teach them the skills, the why that they need, and give them ample opportunity to practice self-governing themselves. If you've already subscribed to this channel, then you know everything here is about self-government skills and principles that don't just help our children, but help us too as parents learn how to self-govern ourselves. In fact, the parent example is a big part of helping children learn to take responsibility for themselves. As a parent, when something happens, when you don't perform your best or make the best choice that you could have made, do you make excuses? Do you blame somebody else? Or do you take full responsibility? Do you talk about the skill that you should have kept in mind and use it the next time? Because if so, then you're emotionally mature and you will have a better time preparing your children to also develop that type of maturity as you are trying to help them learn to take personal responsibility for themselves. So let's be very clear. A person will not learn to think for themselves unless they recognize they have responsibility for a good portion of themselves. So that means that we have to turn some of that responsibility over to the child. But that doesn't mean that we abandon the child or stop parenting. That just means that we teach the child more so that they know the places where they actually get to make a choice. On this channel, I teach skills, lots of them. There are actually 4 basic skills of self-government that I start teaching children when they're really, really young. We're talking before they can even form complete sentences. These children's books each teach one of the 4 basic skills of self-government. The children can start learning even when they're babies. What are the 4 basic skills of self-government? They are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. For sure, disagree appropriately is one of the more complex word skills, but you can actually teach a baby how to do it using language they already know, like the word mama, and understanding what calmness is, and learning the sign language for please. That's a simplified way of teaching that skill. So like I said, you can start teaching these skills really early on. So when we want a child to start thinking for themselves, we need to be able to break down the skills into smaller pieces. Each one of these children's books takes one of the 4 basic skills of self-government and breaks it down into pieces so that you can discuss each individual piece with your child, find the ones that come easy for them, the ones they need to work on, and then use those pieces as you evaluate circumstances that happen in your daily living. Let me just give you an example for that. So let's say that your child is working on accepting a no answer. This is a pretty basic one and also the one people don't master the most. This is because we like things to go our way. So if you teach your child that the steps to accepting a no answer or criticism are 4 steps. Look at the person or the situation, so that means you acknowledge it. Keep a calm face, voice, or body, so here's some self-awareness and self-planning that has to happen. Say okay or ask to disagree appropriately. So you recognize you can't control everything, but you do want the opportunity to try to have your opinions and thoughts be understood and heard and work with other people around you in a productive way. And then after you've discussed it all, number 4 is drop the subject. That means we don't think about it anymore. We don't talk about it anymore. We allow ourselves not to take things personally and we move on. This is super hard. There are so many adults that cannot drop the subject. They let one little thing make their whole day bad. And this is because they don't understand the skill of accepting a no answer. So let's say you've pre-taught that skill to your child. Now, how are they going to start taking ownership over it? Well, at first, they're going to accept no answers from you, but then you're going to teach them that there are other no answers in their life that don't sound like the word no, such as a boundary line that they don't cross over. So let's say that they're not supposed to take something that doesn't belong to them. That's a boundary line that we don't cross over, right? So if you have taught them how to accept no answers, now you can say this line that exists in front of everybody else's belongings is a line you don't cross over. It's a no answer. If you cross over that line and touch somebody else's things or take somebody else's things, you're not dropping the subject because you know that line is there that you shouldn't cross over. And if you choose to cross over, then we'll have to correct you for not accepting a no answer. So then they have that boundary line in front of them. They have to observe it all by themselves. And if they cross over, sure, you're still going to correct them because you're going to help teach them cause and effect. But it was them that observed the no answer. You didn't give it to them. Now there's other things that can be no answers too. What if something doesn't go their way? What if they get served a food that they don't like? Or maybe they're playing a ball game on the playground and somebody steals the ball and goes and scores a point for the other team. Those are all no answers of life. Things that we have to cope with and accept and not take personally. So those are going to be moments where you're not always there to help them through that time of hardship. And they have to learn that it's okay, drop the subject, move on. At first, as you're seeing them do this on their own, then you will discuss that with them. You will talk to them about what they just did and how they accepted the no answer all on their own. You might give them a high five and tell them how good they're getting at this. And maybe even talk about other no answers that are around them that they could practice accepting all by themselves. Then over time, you'll stop needing to make any comments at all because it will just happen. Now, sometimes, like I mentioned, we have to correct the children in order to teach them cause and effect. This is the big time where they learn to take responsibility for themselves. If they have to be corrected, don't be afraid of it. Be consistent. Do that correction. Be calm about it. There's no need to be upset or emotional, but make sure that they get the opportunity to accept their negative consequence. If not, they won't learn self-government, and they might start making excuses or blame other people for some of the consequences that are just natural parts of living. So we've talked about teaching skills. I know we only went through one, but there are others, and I'll tell you where to find them. So we've talked about teaching skills. We want to pre-teach those skills ahead of time and then making sure that we follow through with the corrections afterward. We've also talked about how to step a person from needing to hear a narrative or feedback about every single skill all the time to being able to give themselves their own feedback. But then there are other steps too. There are certain meetings that we have as part of a self-government family structure that help the child set goals, follow through, and just have weekly times of reporting back so that they can see themselves succeed. They know that they're the ones who are making those empowered decisions, and that will help them for their future life. If you want to find more about the skills and principles of self-government, because we've just touched the surface here, then I highly recommend going to my next video, which is the not-so-known secret for parenting success. Click on the link to that full video next. I'll see you there.